Hey everybody, welcome to the Strive Summit podcast. I'm your host, Alex Hanna, and with me today I have Chris Kercheval. Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Chris Kercheval. Currently working for Leica Geosystems as a technical sales and support representative, but what got me there was 12 years of survey and really laid the groundwork for my love of being outside like I am right now. Just being out in nature and working with tech. Kind of as surveying for me became less and less fun thanks to oil and gas. Laser scanning came on my radar and had an opportunity to get into it on a manufacturer level. Yeah, I live in Pennsylvania, but I've lived all over the East Coast and, kind of have passport, will travel as a, 20-year-old, just get out and explore life. And for me, it was basically a good exploration and finding out what I didn't want to do.
And that's always a good thing, especially when you can travel and see what you want to do, or just taste things and test things and be like, yeah, no, maybe not for me. I love that. Um,
Yeah,
I didn't know you were a licensed surveyor.
well, I'm not actually a licensed surveyor. I thought about it one time when I was like kind of in it, but I answered an ad in a paper. At the time, I was living in Florida, was working at a hotel front desk. I guess that service is kind of in my blood, right? Being outside and helping people. So now I just got a notice one day. Manager called and said, "Hey, I'm not coming into work. There's something going on with the building." Ended up getting like completely laid off. 2 days later, the building was gone. It turned out there was mold upstairs, and the owner didn't tell anybody.
Mm,
So yeah, got in
that's
all into the AC. Somebody got sick, called the health department. Whole building got shut down, torn down. Saw an ad in the paper. It was like, surveyor, field guy wanted. And sure, I'll give that a shot. I absolutely loved it. So I just learned from the guys that were licensed, and through my career, learned probably more from the older guys. How to pull out a drag tape and a compass and just hack your way towards, whatever the bearing is. You don't have a total station, you don't have GPS, but at least you're, getting in grade stakes. So that was really fun learning like old school methodology. And yeah, oil and gas killed the fun of it before I could get to the licensure part.
so. Question about land surveying. Now, usually I ask what's the latest tech you've been playing with lately. But since you talked about surveying, what was some of the tools and stuff that you were introduced to that you thought was like the tits, right? Because like I did a little bit of surveying, and I we had like the manual eye line, and then there was
hmm
the digital. I'm like, oh, digital eye line. Why would I not use that, right? And now there's all this other stuff. But when you got into it, what like was like, oh yeah, I'm doing surveying.
What was really cool for me at the time, tech wise, was whenever we were able to go out with like handheld Garmin. And we were able to use that like for surveying purposes to put something down. That was kind of the beginning of GPS being adopted. Everything before that, now granted, these were just little monumentations that we had set and we had field notes, right? It's just a reference point, but we were able to use GPS for the first time, and not have to total station everything. That was a big one for me. I started with the Ashtec, which was a big orange backpack, weighed about 45 pounds, had this huge boxy unit inside of it, and you had to carry about 48 AA batteries because the thing ran on 24 of them and it would die like halfway through the day. And you had to sit there for 1 minute and take a shot, and then do it again 3 times, and then average them. And if you were outside of your tolerance, you had to basically do it all over again. So each individual shot at that time with that tech took 1 minute to take a shot, where now we're taking and averaging, like 50 shots in, a couple seconds. It's like, oh yeah, we got it. Now this
That's
was,
that's
really
incredible.
old school. Yeah, so I like where the tech is now with something like a GS18 with an eye on it, right? So you have this like inclinometer for tilt, can correct almost, parallel, almost all the way to the ground, right? You can do a lot with the tech now that wasn't available at the time. So that really blows my mind in just 20 years where we've come.
So, for the listeners who don't know anything about surveying or the GS18 or any of the acronyms you're talking about, if
hmm
you were to play it dumb, how does that orange backpack work and how does the GS18 work?
The
Yeah.
orange,
Huh?
well, okay, so they both do the same thing. It's essentially like your cell phone, right? We'll dumb it way down. You can be in your
Perfect.
house, open up Google Maps, and walk around your house and watch your little dot kind of follow you, right? It's plus or minus 5 feet in your house. It'll kind of follow you to the corners. It's not going to be spot on, but not bad. Same idea, greater degree of accuracy. But the unit was a lot bigger, kind of like cell phones. Right now we have iPhones and smartphones, but before that, the phones were getting really small, like the little teeny tiny
I
Nokias or
I
like a
had a
Razor.
tiny Sony Ericsson, like super tiny. It was like,
Yes.
yeah, buttons. Yeah, I remember that. And
hmm
then they got big again. Sorry,
And then they
continue.
got big again. But when they started, it was basically a brick. Those Zach Morris Motorola phones from Saved by the Bell, if anyone's in that, generation.
Yep.
Those phones were like the first cell phones. It was big, bulky technology. That's what you had to do. You had to wear it. It was not at the level where it is now, where it's, microchip level. You just add it to something else that's already small and put it in your pocket and away you go.
So when you talk about taking shots, what is it
hmm
doing when it's taking a shot?
When you're taking a shot, you're getting your position on the ground from multiple satellites above you floating around in space. So they're locked in orbit around the Earth, and you rotate through these satellites. And there's different ways you can do it, but essentially you're pinpointing your location from satellites in space, looking down on you and collecting your information, triangulating and correcting for, and then you would apply, the Earth is not a perfect sphere, so we have mountains and valleys and rivers and streams, oceans, right? What's called a geoid. So there's a lot to it to survey. The guys really just aren't out there taking pictures with that big yellow camera, right? They're shooting a laser at something. That's the ground way to do it. GPS is you just rely on the satellites to tell you where you are, and then you're averaging each time you take a shot. It's like, hey, I'm here, and you keep doing that multiple times, and then you average them together and figure out, of those 3 or 4 shots that you took, where are you really? Kind of refine it.
So, okay, now explaining that in a dumbed down way, what you do is like Mission
hmm
Impossible level, guy in a chair, open this door for me. I gotta get through this. You know what I mean? Like,
hmm
I mean, and that's essentially what LiDAR and laser scanning and surveying is with the GPS coordinates, right? And it's it's different because when we talk about it in the industry, you and I, GS18, big orange box, doing shots and GPS. To us, this is a normal conversation, right? But
Correct.
to anyone out there who's like has no idea what surveying is, and you're like, yeah, we talk to satellites all day. We're doing 50 shots a second. We're you can go to Google Maps and see you walk around your house. I've never actually done that. I know that it works because I Google Map like routes and stuff,
Right.
but I've never actually zoomed in and walked around my house to watch my dot move. And
Yeah, watch your dot move around your house. Yeah.
that's crazy. I never even thought about that because I have a tile, right? And the tile does a similar thing, but it'll
Okay,
like
yeah.
tell you and ping it where it is. But like, yeah, that's some cool stuff. So okay, so latest tech. So we went from sticks and manual lines to big orange backpack.
hmm
What is it today, or anything you've used lately that just blows that orange backpack out of the water?
I think where the SLAM tech is going in terms of LiDAR acquisition, 3D points of okay, so let me try to dumb this down. A 3D image of a space, right? It's to scale. So you can go to a really large warehouse, let's say a 1 million square foot warehouse, or go to your neighborhood giant Cabela's
Hmm.
and walk around with a device in your hand for a half an hour, basically just go shopping while you're holding this thing. You download it, you put it into a piece of software that crunches some numbers and kind of puts it together. And like a puzzle, all of those little pieces of the walking that you did go together like a puzzle, and you get a 3D miniaturized version that is accurate in distance of the whole entire thing. You can be a bird in the rafters and look down and measure anywhere to anywhere is a measurable point. And it's just billions and trillions of points that make up. It's essentially you're inside of your HD TV.
that's a that's a
You
very good
crawled through the
example. Yeah.
TV onto the 50-yard line at the Super Bowl, right? Like that's almost what it's like. The ability to do that in a very small handheld device and essentially like your cell phone. Just walk around, not the iPhone LiDAR, but something, almost this big.
That's awesome. I mean, we talk about the iPhone LiDAR. I talk about Polycam a lot because it's the introductory tool that people ask me like, what do you do? You know, like how does it work? And so I'm in VDC, BIM, AEC, construction, pick one, right? But I show
Right.
them Polycam because everyone's got an iPhone, and usually it's
Yep.
newer. I was like, hey, download this thing, take a scan. Do you like photography? Awesome. Do you have a .edu email out of college? Awesome. Get yourself some software. Start
Hmm.
training, right? This pathway of I call it the pathway of BIM. There's like architecture, engineering, and then this industry that you and I are in that are not in the same space is the middle path, right?
Right.
So people go to college in architecture, engineering, and they fall into this path, or like I not go to college, right, and fall into this path. What I'm trying to say is this path is so big, you can make definitive and very lucrative careers not being an engineer or architect, but
Right.
doing the stuff that interests you, like LiDAR. I mean, talk a little bit. I mean, game design, VFX, right? That's all. Sometimes you got to do scans, and you scan the land around you, and you put it in your background. You have no idea. It's all done with lidar scans and stuff like that. I'm going on a rant here, but I just love the technology where we're at today. It's very exciting that every day I go on my LinkedIn feed and I see something new every day. Mike Gula posting his 3D images using the Canon it's like a Canon lens that you takes two photos at the same time. So
Oh,
now your
okay.
360s are actual 1-to-1, right? Um, River RIVR, they do the same thing. It's
Oh,
crazy
yeah.
how that stuff works.
Yeah, the photogrammetry, one of the things when the LiDAR came out on the iPhone, I was kind of excited but kind of bummed. Bummed in that I know it's not going to be the best quality product, but more so excited that it's an introduction to everybody for this very small niche community that if you go somewhere and you say, "Oh yeah, I'm in 3D reality capture," they're like, "Oh, you do 3D printing." I'm like, "Well, no." But we could talk about that later, right? You just say,
Yeah,
"Okay, yeah, yeah, that's what I do," right? If that's what you know, we'll go with it. Now they have that on their phone, and to them it's really cool. To us, we're like, "Oh, that's a horrible representation of that object," right? um, Based on the accuracies, but what they're putting into a phone gets people interested in it. So maybe a
yeah,
kid that gets an iPhone at 10 plays with the LiDAR, decides he really likes it, then he puts two and two together. Hey, this is kind of like my video game, right? And he gets into understanding that a lot of video games have reality capture point clouds
hmm
turned to meshes as a framework to maintain that structural integrity of a place. So if you've been there, it looks familiar to you.
yeah,
Right. So it's opening career paths for kids to something that they weren't previously exposed to.
yeah. And you could definitely use it to your advantage. There's an app out there. Actually, it just came up again on the LinkedIn feed. It came up where this guy made an app about rock climbing routes. And so what he did is he'd scan and photogrammetry these side of these cliffs with not LiDAR, but just photogrammetry pictures in Polycam. And then
Right.
he'd source everything through Polycam and do all the stitching and stuff through there too. But taking advantage of the technology you have in your hand is like I put to it as like when people do TikTok, right? They have a video camera on their phone and they can do TikToks and they can take advantage and go viral and make a lot of money. There's a scanner on your phone too. There's,
Right.
there's so many things that you can do with just a scanner. Um, okay, I've gone on too long ranting about this technology. We're going to get into way more of it later. Um, but Chris, let's talk about your journey into this LiDAR surveying role. I know we talked about how you found an
Hmm.
ad just working at a hotel, but what was your career path thought like when you were in high school or something like that? How did you get to there?
Oh man. So I think like a lot of people, right? I don't want to say like a lot of kids these days. I think just a lot of people in general, right? When you're younger and people are starting to say, "Oh, you're in your junior, you're becoming a senior in high school, like, oh, where are you going to go to college? What do you want to do?" That's a lot of pressure. Like, I've
Hmm.
not done anything, right? Like maybe I've worked at my experience was I worked at my stepdad's grocery store, right? So from a smaller age, I was working at a family grocery store. I just know I didn't want to do that. but I had no clue what I wanted to do. Like the world was my oyster. I had all these possibilities, and I just had choice overload. We'll call it the Netflix effect, right? As
Okay.
a
Yep.
kid, you just have choice overload. People say, "Oh, you can be whatever you want. What do you want to be?" I don't know. And
A
so high
ninja,
school,
NASCAR driver. Pick one. Yeah.
yeah, for me, my inspiration starting out was in high school. I had a professor who he really hit me with his style of teaching psychology, right? So being a junior in high school, taking this psychology class, I'm like, this is just fascinating. I love it. Ate it up. I didn't do that great in his class, but I love the content.
Hmm.
I took him again senior year, and I went to school, for college, and I was kind of determined that I wanted to be a counselor. So I was going to go for psychology with a sociology minor, and that's what I was set on. I still love both of those topics. I'm kind of glad I'm not in that career path, but I got really bad advice from my advisor in college, went down the wrong road, and got to the point where I just left because I didn't want to be in college anymore. I just wanted to go out and find myself. So I did. And along that path, I found myself working at like hotels and places where I'm doing kind of customer service. And, I've kind of come back to that. That might be my why, or that's kind of my deep
Hmm.
passion, is just to help people. But along the way I found a love of tech, and really solidified my love of being outside.
Yeah. I mean, we're all here just being a bunch of nerds. All of us love technology. I mean,
Right.
I know people that will do Minecraft all day and they're out there doing buildings and then they find a way to mash them together, right? So, okay, so you're out there, you love technology, you get into surveying. How'd you go from surveying to like it?
So for me, surveying was a lot of fun when I was in Florida and we were doing residential mortgage surveys. Basically, people are flipping houses. We got to go and like note down whatever they added on outside. If
Hmm.
everything was interior, we just walk around, take a couple of quick measurements, check it off the list, go to the next one. Those were fun. Or we'd be putting in corners for houses as they're going up, and a new development, or like a new subdivision, right? We're in there setting corners, and then they're building the houses. They've already knocked everything over. We go and set them back in, check, make sure all the offsets are good. That stuff was fun, right? We're working around live construction, or we're just out in the woods. Um, it was really just being adventurous and being a professional trespasser. Oil and gas is where, for me, the fun left, because it wasn't go do this and then go to the next one. And it wasn't, always a revolving door of new jobs, new areas. I really got to learn South Florida and way into the swamp, right? Like,
Hmm.
there's no
Yeah.
boundary for survey, right? Like, there's no bounds of where we can't survey. We just have to change equipment. Um, really,
I mean
that's about it.
that should be a quote. That make that into a
Yeah.
banner, sell as a badge.
I mean, they survey the moon, right?
Yeah.
Like oceans, we survey whatever. We just have to change equipment depending on where we are. But no, oil and gas, and having to do the same thing over and over and over again and doing rework. I spent one whole winter on top of a hill in Ohio. Open farm field, no tree break around me. I'm like one of the highest points in the county. And, it's like -30 with the wind chill, even cold, can get even
Yep.
colder than that. And I'm carrying as much lath as I can possibly, shove into stakes, and trekking miles, like writing down numbers on grade stakes and pounding them through like 2 foot of snow and ice, and just doing that line over and over and over again just wore me out. And yeah, I can't do repetitive tasks. Like accounting would not be for me. So that's one of those things that my love of the job and the tech met a really strong resistance in doing the same thing over and over again. And yeah, I ended up, one of the companies we were working in conjunction with, their head pipeline router switched jobs and called me one day and said, "Hey, you want to come work for me?" I said, "When do I start?" Right? So it was cut out the middleman. I'm the one making the changes, not telling someone else to do it after they just, changed it again. And
Hmm.
the pay was better and like less oversight. Really just loved it. And when that sort of was starting to go away, like the shale boom was on its way out, at that time for exploration, there was a need for someone with a survey background that could speak to laser scan people that wanted to use the scanner like a survey total station. So I was very interested and just jumped all in and learned a brand new industry from scratch. And it took me like, I want to say 3 months for me to stop thinking like a surveyor and start
Okay.
thinking like someone who scans, because I want to say there's 50% of the time they're about the same in terms of principles. And the other 50%, there's completely the opposite. And I couldn't wrap my head around which ones were the same and which ones were the opposite. But that just furthered my love of learning and where the tech's going. And then it was like, okay, well, what are you doing with it? Right? Like, oh, okay, this guy's scanning this. Oh, well, oh, you're in a ship? Oh, you went to a cave? Wait, hold up. You're in a cave with a laser scanner? Hold on. Huh. So yeah, that's kind of how I got to where I am, is just a journey of exploration and just staying curious.
Okay, so talking about when you're getting really curious after your
Hmm.
pipeline stuff and you're starting to see all these things, what are you doing? What are you doing? How did you get involved with the community? Like, where did you find your network was, and how did you do your outreach? Was it, just connections you made at the job site? Like, personally for me, it's conferences and LinkedIn. Like, conferences are great ways to meet people, and LinkedIn, honestly, there's a great community out there on LinkedIn that's willing to help. You just got to be able to be brave enough to speak up about it. But yeah,
That's
for
very true.
you,
Yes.
where was that for you?
I would say definitely LinkedIn. For surveyors, the conferences are, I don't want to say exclusively, but they're almost reserved for the PLSs, right? They go to the conference for their continuing ed credits. They're not sending the field guys to a conference. The field guys are, working in the field so that the boss can go to the conference.
Hmm.
So I'd never had that opportunity. For me, it wasn't until I got on LinkedIn and I started finding different communities within surveyors or within my area, people that I'd worked with in the past, and then kind of check out their connections, right? So that was a lot of it. But I think the main driver is personal relationships. Just the other contractors that I'm working with, I don't know, maybe that guy's just having a bad day when he, like cuts me off coming into the job site. I'm not gonna, go say something or start anything. I don't know, whatever, man. Like, we have different jobs to do. He's in a bigger hurry than I am. But you know what? It turns out maybe in, a week or two, you have a conversation with that guy, and he knows the guy that you need to get what you want, right?
Yep, yep. That kind of communication on the job site is absolutely pivotal to any, like, first job. You know, you're you're working as a surveyor. The communication you have to have with people on the job site, along with the surveyor, to the client, to the contractor,
Mm-hmm.
to your boss, right? And that all leads down a whole nother path of work for you. Like, my communication, I still, since getting into this, finding out what BIM was, I was doing it for about 3 years until I like made a LinkedIn account and got on social media, and I was like, holy crap! Like, there's more people like me struggling. Um,
Yeah.
but that's what it was LinkedIn, and then I started posting, about things that I saw wrong in the industry and things that I wanted to fix, and like complaints that I had, and I realized, holy crap, there's people like me that say that, and they'd comment, and I was like, hey, I love your comment, let's talk and chit chat. And it's that simple, but it's really hard to be opinionated online and be ready for the backlash. Because I tell everyone who does anything, I'm like, you have to be opinionated in this business. If you don't have an opinion, then whatever you're doing doesn't really matter. Okay, you have to have
Yeah,
an opinion.
yep. You have to stand one way or the other. You can't always, play the middle to be everyone's
Hmm.
friend, because then it seems like you're a pushover, right? So you have to have a stance. Somebody can, agree with you in principle on whatever that is. I get that. I think that's one of the biggest things right now that is not being focused on that I think should. It's lacking the attention it deserves, which is interpersonal communication. Everybody wants to do something online, right? It's really easy to be a troll or a hater online, and that deters people from putting out what they feel and finding their community. They don't want to get that backlash, so they just don't say anything. Whereas, interpersonal communication in person, I'm honestly trying to go as analog as I can. Like I turn my phone off and just set it down sometimes, right? I just go for a walk. I don't take anything digital with me and just take it in and just be present. And I do that in conversations, right? So I'll like put my phone somewhere else, and if I'm having a conversation with someone, they're the focus of my attention.
Hmm.
And in doing so, I think you can build really good relationships that can foster your careers, your passions, right? And increase your network because people get to know you better in person
Yep.
than they do in an online thing. Well, I know he likes this and this because I've seen him say so online. Well, that's a great start, but pick up the phone, have a call with someone, and that's to your point of community. That's how Dustin Manning and I got introduced by a mutual sort of person that we knew, not really, well, a colleague now, but wasn't at the time.
Hmm.
And we just started having an organic conversation about what we saw could be improved in our industry. And that led to more organic conversations. That led to a group, and then more people, the more we talked about it, the more people wanted to join, and they did. So it was a very organic grassroots start for a change movement. Now I'm understanding like where these you know, um, protests and things come from is, somebody said something, somebody else agreed.
Hmm.
It didn't necessarily have to be online, but, it gains momentum the more you talk about it, the more you have a passion for it, right?
Yep.
Drives things forward. And I think in person is where you get a lot of that. Like you can do it via video now because everyone's so connected, but yeah, add some human nature to it, I think.
I love hearing people's passion in their voice when they talk about what they love to do.
Right.
Like, um, I just had a person on a podcast who was talking about tech and using Revit and IFCs and AI and stuff. And like we kept rambling and like, oh, this is too fast. We got to slow down. We got to pick a spot. We got to move on. But I very much enjoy that. And one of my passions is getting people excited about what I do. Like, so for our listeners out there, Chris and I know each other. I actually met Chris on the USIBD committee for laser scanning,
Hmm. Correct.
which was a brand new experience for me. I don't do any Lidar or laser scanning. I've been around it. I've pushed the button before. I've played with scans and models, but that's not my background. So to be invited on a committee like that, I had I had to really think about if it was like for me or not. And Chris, what would you tell me?
I don't remember exactly what I told you, but it was like, come in, join, just listen, give your opinion.
I have a way different opinion or of anybody on there about laser scanning,
And
right?
I love that.
And it's different because I'm not in those day-to-day talks, but I come in as an outsider and say, look, based on laser scanning I've seen, this is what needs to happen. I've mentioned a few times, like, it should not be a big deal for a laser scanner to come on site. It should be standard. I'm working on a
Oh,
project
yeah.
now. There should have been a scan at the very beginning of what the project looked like when we go to remodel. No matter what model or CAD you have, if there's no scan, it is wrong. That's the way I look at it. That was the first thing I did when I came out. I was like, I need a scan of the building today. I don't care what it is, just give me something to reference. Um, and through that, we found out why issues been happening previous and what's issue coming up because we have actual real time data of what it is. Now, what you guys do for scanning maybe is totally different, but like for me, I'm like, give me high detail, give me low detail. I don't need this much space. I need to see everything. I don't need pictures. Whereas I've worked with Dustin Manning. Dustin Manning is the guy he's black and white and as much as you need, and he's quick in and out.
Yep.
I love his work because in construction, people behind the computers, the BIM guys, we don't need colors, we don't need photos. What we need is the data. So
Right.
black and white, quick scan, on site, on off, like that's how scanning should be. But when it comes to the C-suite and they go to hire a scanner, they're like, "Oh yeah, HDR pictures, you know, 5 minute scans. Bring out that RTC360. Yeah, do it. Actually,
Hmm.
I'm gonna buy one of those. No idea what he does with it, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
so talk about a little bit about the USIBD, what they were about, and kind of like how that worked.
Okay. So, For me, I was working for a manufacturer local to Pittsburgh at the time, and I found myself wanting to do more. And
Hmm.
I found myself having been to like 4 or 5 trade shows and listening to people come up to you at a trade show, and they're asking you questions like, "Oh, does your product do this?" or "Oh, do you know of a way to do this?" Right? I'm hearing all of these problems, and I'm talking to all these people that are just looking for a solution, right? Not necessarily wholesale to all the problems, but just to theirs specifically. And a lot of times they were all met with, no, there's nothing that does that. And then I started thinking about other areas, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, why aren't we all playing the same game, right? Like, it, it's an infinite game. People are going to come, they're going to go, the rules change, right? Everybody kind of agrees on some things, but we don't even have that baseline. We're just, a bunch of kids in the sandbox playing with way too many toys, and uh, it's like you can't trade like a Pokemon for like a Tonka truck. Like that's not exactly like the even trade that, would fly now. Um, and so I reached out to some people that I had met through these conferences and asked, like, hey, where would you go to start to create change, right? Like, where's the standards for this industry? And everyone just kept saying there are no standards for this industry. And that really bothered me. So I got
Hmm.
on the phone with as many people as I could. I got a referral for John Russo at USIBD, United States Institute for Building and Documentation. So I had a call with him, and first time we ever talked, I think it was like 2 hours. And I just told him like what all the pain points I saw were, how I wanted to help and do, change for the good of the industry because it's so niche still, right? We're still in that
Oh yeah.
early adopter stage.
Hmm.
There's time to correct the ship and make it better, make it be the best that it could, not accept what it is, right? That's my problem is I'm not accepting the industry for what it is now. And John said, okay, you can have a chair. We'll call you the, Laser Scan Committee. Hey, I got a guy that called a little while ago about the level of accuracy, the LOAs. And he was like, why don't you give him a call? And so I think it was Dustin,
Oh
right?
wow.
And
Okay.
then
Yeah.
we've been talking and like, friends ever since. And it all started with we both agreed that the industry could be better. It's like, well, how do we do that? John's given us a platform and we ran with it for 5, 6 years. Talked about all kinds of things, where to start. We're normalizing the spec sheet to put everyone in the same playground using the what's called the Monroney sticker. It's basically go to a used car or go to any car dealership and look at the back passenger window behind the driver's seat. There's always a sticker and it always tells you the same stuff in all the same places. That's what we're trying to do to create some sort of a standard, right? And then branch out from there. And along the way, we're just telling everybody that we know and wants to listen to us ramble about our passion for trying to make this industry the best that it can be.
That's awesome. Yeah, standards are super important, especially when it comes to like laser scanners now. I think it was like 3 or 4 years since I found out what RTC360 was. Leica was my first introduction. Typically with like big offices, that's what it is. And then you learn about the Pharaohs, and then you learn about these other companies that are coming out, and then new scanners are coming out now. And then Top Gun comes out, and then Top Gun did laser beams, and now they're doing scanners, and Leica did photos, and now they're doing scanners.
Hmm.
So you hear about all this stuff coming out, and having the standard of performance, right? When I buy this scanner, what is the performance I'm going to get out of it compared to the performance of this scanner, right? Yeah, I believe you guys did a shootout at Geo Week 2 years ago, last year.
Well, yeah, technically 2 years in a row we did. 2 years ago, we put the spec sheets into a visual form, right?
Hmm.
So for the audience that isn't familiar with laser scanning, the spec sheet tells you what the performance of this thing's going to be at a certain distance. You can expect this much. Um, equate it to um, basically equate it to walking into like a Costco or a Walmart and you see a really big HD TV on the wall. Okay.
Hmm.
So what you see in terms of the quality of the picture a lot of times comes down to how many points there are on it so that you can have more colors to make it more vibrant. There's a distance that you would stand at, let's say 30 feet away from all of the wall of TVs, and stand there and look around and then pick the one that looks the best to you, right? That's going to probably have the most resolution, the crispest, the clearest. There's a numbers version of that that is more often than not full of hyperbole and fluff, and it's in no particular order. Some are just paragraphs, some are charts. It really is just a hodgepodge of, well, this is what this thing does. We want to make it look, a little bit more normalized. And then it's like,
Hmm.
well, how do you put all of those numbers into that wall of TVs? So what we did was we put all of the scanners in the exact same spot on the exact same pedestal, and then we had materials boards and a target. So we had just mixed stuff that you would find on a job site, basically glued to a big piece of plywood, set at 5, 10, and 20 meters. So it's like, well, what's half the spec sheet going to look like? What's the spec sheet going to look like? And what's twice that going to look like? So we did that to be able to visualize what those numbers mean for the people that don't understand the numbers. Plus, the numbers aren't always in the same metric anyway, right? Some might be in like imperial, some are in metric. So if you don't know conversion between foot and meter, you're just, I don't know which one's the biggest, right?
I, I love that. I mean, I'm sad I wasn't able to go that week. I know I got invited to come out and I was ready to help out, but I didn't get a chance to go. But I love that that's coming out and that, you were at the center of it. Because knowing you for however long I've known you now, I've known you to be very critical. And critical is what's needed in an industry where there's no standards. And building a standard being critical is huge. So I want to thank you for the work that you're putting in for laser scanners for the people who don't know what they're doing or buying. Um, Also, if you're interested and you want to know what laser scanner might work best for your application, reach out to Chris for sure. Um,
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, Alex.
no, yeah, seriously. So, on top of all of this, um, there is an announcement that, Chris, I'd like you to kind of break to everyone about
Okay.
kind of what we're doing
Hmm.
and what the goal is and what the future looks like.
Ooh, yeah, that's bright. So in starting out with USIBD, right, the first year we went to the conference and we had people bring their scanners, we put them up on a pedestal. The second year we took terrestrial and we took SLAM scanners, two different techniques of collecting data, but the same source of Lidar. After doing that and realizing that essentially we're not strong enough in our presence to the audience that needs us the most, we've decided to branch off onto our own as a separate nonprofit, but still tied to and partnering with on occasions USIBD. So we're launching what we're calling the committee. We are a collective group of people all with the same goal. Let's get reality capture as an industry to be the best that it possibly can. We're going to all come at it from our own individual perspectives so that basically no small stone gets left unturned, right? No little niche area of this niche market will be under or non-represented. We already have forestry. We're working on, let's see, well, I mean, we
Uh,
have AEC, BIM,
yeah,
forestry, right? We're kind of working on the VFX and like the visual effects people, but we're going outside of just the normal, I want to talk to an architect, I want to talk to an engineer, right? And we're going all the way down to who are the people that are consuming this data that have no idea where it was sourced from, right? The numbers that they're seeing and the image that they're getting is from a laser scan, but it's been processed and what digested and transformed so many times into something that's designed for them that they don't
tangible,
understand that,
yeah.
hey, that, yeah, it's now tangible for them, but it started as a scan, right? So we want to go, from A to Z, alpha to omega, all the way through the life cycle of a project. No matter the project, we want that industry represented and we want to hear their pain points, right? So if you're in reality capture, what are your pain points? How can we help, right? We will answer everything with yes and, right? How can we help you? make an introduction, put in a feature request, whatever we can do. We're a sounding board for those that feel unheard, and we're trying to, get everybody on board to be a very loud voice so that the industry can't ignore its users, really.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be a part of this committee. Like just alone the forestry part, had no idea Lidar was using forestry, right?
Hmm.
And then I forgot his name, but he comes and he's talking about how he's using Lidar on drones and stuff. I'm mind blown.
Yep.
Uh, criminology, we're
Yeah.
talking crime
Public
scenes
safety.
and public safety. Yeah, all this stuff that you never would think that Lidar is used on a regular basis. Because we're in this construction tunnel, right? We don't realize that they're all this. So on top of this, like I talked about earlier, engineering, architect, BIM,
Hmm.
lidar is like police, firefighter, forestry,
Yeah.
surveyor, whatever you want. It's crazy
Well,
how much that goes in
and,
depth.
and that's where I think where we can go with this. So our basis is going to be our foundation is education. The iPhone user now that is really intrigued by the LiDAR, if they decide they want to move forward with that as a career, the committee would love to help foster that and give them an opportunity to get real world experience, right? So like for me as a kid, what do you want to do? I don't know. The world's my oyster. I have all of these options. The committee would love to present those new to industry folks. Hey, do you want to go work with a guy on a construction site with a laser scanner today? Cool. Let's get you like a 1 day internship. Let's go see what that's like. Hey, do you want to go do that same thing with a guy in forestry? Oh, okay, cool. Hey, do you want to go do that with a criminal guy who's going to go, scan this car crash on the side of the highway? Like, we'll try to make, I can't guarantee that, but, um, but try to get something, that is a real world experience, like a 1 or 2 day, a short internship, so to speak, right? Nobody's doing the grunt work, but you get to experience what it's really like to use that tech in a field to maybe refine your career further and then help you understand how to use that tech in that sense to get the most efficient and most effective product, right? Because how you would do it for a crime scene is completely different than how you're going to do it on a construction site, right?
So when you're talking field experience, so if there's like a 3-day trip to find Sasquatch with a drone and a lidar system, we could
Let's
set that
do it.
up.
Yeah.
I'm in. He's alive. He's out there. I'm gonna find him.
All right. Well, we'll go find them, man. We'll set up some sensors and
Let's.
I go ahead, Alex.
I would say let's get funded. Let's take donations right now. We're doing a Sasquatch hunt. We're
Yes.
gonna test lidar to its fullest out in the woods.
We could do that. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what you'll see LiDAR on now in TV and these shows. So
Hmm.
I'm really hoping that it sparks the interest in the tech, in those careers, and in those little niche areas, right? That yeah, I think they're very underrepresented, and no one's really speaking for them in the manufacturer sense. So there's no one product aimed for them. They just have to find the best fit and try to make it work. It's
Yep.
probably not the best that the industry has to offer, but they're not aware of that user yet. And that's
Right.
where we want to come in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's like the forestry thing. I had no idea. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe the lidar people out there have no idea that it's used. They just think it's GPR, right? Ground penetrating lidar. But it's you're flying around trying to get live data. And remind me, but isn't the forestry lidar for deforestation and also restoration of these forests?
Yeah, they're using it for that, and well, it depends on who you talk to. So some of the folks that I've talked to in forestry, they're doing it to monitor the health of a forest
Hmm.
from the ground level, because these old growth forests, you can only see so much from the air because of the canopy. And then if
Hmm.
you wait until fall and in the right environments, you wait until fall, you can't really get a good sense of the health of the tree from the trunk on the bark, but you can kind of see what it looks like on the ground without the leaves. So they're scanning to document the sizes of the trees, the spacing of the trees, and the undergrowth underneath, right? So they can mark the trees in such a way, like with something near it, so that it's a target, so to speak, right? That they could scan that tree and basically make a transparency overlay over 5 to 10 years. How much bigger has this tree gotten by taking the laser scans and overlaying them on top of each other, right? So you have 10 years
Yeah,
ago to today, and then you can measure that distance without having to send somebody out and, you know, physically measure every single tree with a tape measure and literally be a tree hugger. Like that would be a very tedious job.
that's
But no,
it's so
yeah,
crazy that that's even a thing. Like that's someone's job.
hmm
Go out there with a
their
laser
job,
scanner, scan this forest.
yeah, go out and scan the forest. So for those that are listening that are interested in like all of these niche areas, don't worry about trying to explore all of those. Like we're doing that research for you. We're going to do testing and we're going to do reporting. And then we're going to teach off of all of that. So we're going to put together tests of, okay, what happens when you take this and this and you put it in the same envelope and you say, okay, these need to be in the same project because they both have their strengths. How do you get those to work together the best? What does it look like when you do this? And then we'll make standardized tests where we put everything through the same course, and then the consumer gets that visual of, is this the right product for me? We'll put out a report to go with that, and then we'll present on it at conferences. So you'll be seeing us in odd places more than likely as we, you know, kind of permeate into the industry. But our goal is to start presenting this need to know information to the people that need to know it, right? We want to go to you. And then the biggest part for us is we want to hear from you. We want to hear your pain points, right? Did we speak to your point? Are you totally against what we just said? Awesome. Change my mind, right?
Yeah,
Like all of this is totally open. It's all for the betterment of the industry and the betterment of ourselves. I think, you know, no one person or no one manufacturer or area of this needs to get cocky and say like, "Oh, I'm number one." Right? There's no metric for that, right? We're
right.
all just, you know, just babies running around or like kind of crawling around at this stage of the industry. There's no overlord yet, right?
I love that. And honestly, again, super excited to be a part of the committee. Thank you for inviting me onto that. Um, if people are looking to reach out to the committee, where can they reach
Mhm.
out to them? Where can they find you?
So we're gonna have our media posted. I honestly don't know when our website's gonna be up, but for right now, you can email me, and as things progress, I can send out a big blast to everyone. It's topcurveconsulting@gmail.com, and Top Curve is spelled TOPKERV consulting@gmail. Just send me an email and, you know, expressing interest, and we'll get you set up for all of the media channels. If you have a pain point and you just want to say, hey, this is what I really love or what I really don't like about reality capture, by all means, please.
Also, if you're listening and you're part of a local college, community college, state college, high school, whatever, and you're interested in something like this, and you got a program similar to technology and digital, let's get in touch. Let's get out there and let's do some work and show you guys what we can do with Lidar and how you can guys advance your careers. Um, Chris, I appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome. I'm excited to, like I said,
Thank you, Alex.
I'm thrilled to see what the future looks like. If you had to leave our viewers with any word, any like inspirational quotes, what would it be?
Mm, I don't have anything off the top of my
Nothing.
head, man. I'm sorry.
Chris says, "Suck it up
Scan it
and do your
all.
best."
Scan it all. Scan everything. Scan everything. That's the inspiration. Scan it all.
I
Scan it
I love
twice.
I love scan everything. Get polycam on your phones and scan it all.
There you
Um,
go. Scan it all, and then
you'll
send it to
you'll
Alex.
yeah. Well, no,
Well, not really, but no.
you got
And then
Chris's email.
tell me about your experience. Don't send your data to Alex, but you can tell me about your experience because I'd be very interested in knowing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. If your listeners enjoyed this, episode of the podcast, feel free to like, follow, subscribe on TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, anywhere you see Strive Summit Podcast, and now the committee. Talk to you guys
Yes,
later.
sounds good.